Hello, class. Some time ago, I had a series of videos on how to make a section perspective. I rendered mine in Photoshop. I then did a little bit of post-processing on that to get nice section lines such as this. And I ended that series just by saying, well, there's a bunch of other things you can do to make this even better. And I had to move on to other things at the time. But now I'm going to circle back, pull up this drawing that I worked on and add a few extra details. I'm going to start with adding actually a ground plane and some soil and grass down at the ground plane to really anchor this, which I think is a great technique. There's a few little steps there. It's not too difficult, but can be worked not just for a section perspective, but also for any old section. Really simple stuff you can do to enhance your drawing. I'm going to look at a little bit of internal lighting. I'll look at adding scale figures, which are of course important to any drawing, and things like that. So let me begin. Before I started this video, I did download some grass just from Google Images and some soil and some silhouettes of people, which you might have, and I'll be using that in this video again. That was just Googling it, saving the image from Google Images, and opening them up. So that's pretty simple. Now the first thing I'm going to do again is I'm going to work on the ground cut line, soil, and some grass. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to make a new layer to be the ground line. So I'm going to make a new layer, call it ground line, and set my foreground color to black to match the cut line I've used before. It doesn't have to be black as a cut line. You might be using a different color or gray tone or something like that, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to go to my paintbrush tool to do this. There's going to be multiple ways of doing this, and I'm going to set my thickness to be about the same size, maybe a little bit less, as the floor or this patio or here. And I'm going to do this by eye a little bit. Again, sometimes renderings, they don't need to necessarily be perfect, but I'm going to click over on this side of my drawing, try to see how straight of a line I can get, and hold shift and click over here to get a straight line. It's not perfectly straight, as we can see. It breaks down over on this side, so I'm just going to go to edit transform and just rotate this a little bit more into the desired angle to sort of match the perspective, just like this. And so that'll be my ground plane. Actually, it looks like if I'm looking closely, I can just tweak it up just a little bit in the field, but there we go. Now I've got a nice ground plane extending beyond my drawing. Now, one of the things I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in and put some soil down here. So ground plane's definitely important. Extending it beyond any section makes a huge difference. But a little tweak to really give this drawing some life is to add some soil, as if like, okay, well I'm cutting above here and I see the building. Well, I'm cutting down here and I'd see soil, right? So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna make it. Well, actually, I'm gonna come over to the soil. I just downloaded this image from Google. I'm just gonna copy everything. I selected everything and copied it. Control A and Control C are shortcuts I just used there. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to paste this in. And obviously it's much larger than it needs to be. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it above my building layer, which is this layer 1 here, but below all of these things. And I'm going to scale it. First, I'm going to start by scaling it in this case. In my case, my image is way bigger than my drawing, so I'm going to scale it down. If yours is smaller, of course, you can just scale it up. Actually, I want the full width of it, so I'm going to make sure it's about this side from side to side now that I think about it. And I'm going to pull it down. Really, I can use any part of this soil. If you like the bottom part better, fine. If you like the top part, that's good. So I'm going to pull it down just so the top, and I don't need the little grass area here. I'm going to redo that in a minute. But so just above my ground line here, and because of the perspective, it's a little more so here. And I'll set this scale. Now what I'm going to do is this would work for a regular section just like this, but because mine's in a slight perspective and there is a vanishing point over to this left-hand side here, I'm actually going to do the perspective tool to just give this soil just a little bit of perspective angle. So something like this arguably might even be more. Maybe that was too much, actually. Something that just at this angle, and finesse it. Probably could have paused it to a certain extent, but just sort of give it the sense of the perspective. I think that's pretty good. So we'll do that. Now, of course, I've got extra soil above the ground plane, which I don't need, and I also want to cut it out from the basement. So what I'm going to do is I like to go to my polygon lasso tool, and I'm just going to zoom in. And because everything is going to be underneath the section cut lines, I can do this pretty roughly. As long as I'm anywhere in between these black lines that I've cut, I can draw around into the outside of the shape of the soil I don't want, and then just delete it all, and there we go. I've got some soil there, and it's already enhancing the drawing a lot. Now, one of the things I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually, just to enhance this ground plane, I'm going to just run some burn and some other tools like that to just change the color a bit up here. Now I could do this on this layer 3. I'm going to call this soil. I could do it right on layer 3, but in case I mess up, I like to duplicate my layers, and it gives me some control. So I'm going to duplicate the layer, make a copy of it, and I'm going to do all my burning and such on here. So I'm going to come over to my burn tool. That's blur. I'm going to click here and go to my burn tool. Set your size to be fairly wide like this. And just then click and hold, and you can see what it's going to do. It's going to darken the edge at the end of my cut plane, which again just sort of strengthens that cut plane, which is usually your darkest level there. So I'm just going to go around and just sort of sketch in. I'm just moving my mouse around. I don't usually do just a lot of this sort of sketching in my work because it can be hard, and I like just sort of simple movements. If I click and let go and click again, it'll become darker just like that. It sort of just enhances that. I could use other things like sponge, which will either saturate or desaturate that line. Just to sort of show it, make it stand out a little bit more by saturating it like that. It's very subtle. I could do it again if I wanted it stronger. And the nice bit about having two layers like this, if I thought I was too strong currently, which arguably I am, because it's hard to see the cut line, well, I'll just take this top layer and just turn the transparency down to a level of subtlety that I just really like to be able to enhance this ground plane but still clearly read the building lines inside of that. And so there we go. We got some soil marked out. It's got a lot of texture. It enhances the cut line, all these things. That's great for any section if you want to bring it to the next level. Now in this case I have a section perspective, so it still feels awkward in the background. It still feels like it's floating a little bit. So to address that, I'm actually going to add some grass back here. And again, I went to Google Images. I just downloaded this and saved it, opened it in Photoshop. So I'm going to Control A to select all, Control C to copy it, and then come into my drawing and paste this in. Now in this case, I'm going to move this grass layer all the way down to even below my building, just like this. And in this case, it probably came in bigger, so I'm going to start by scaling it. Edit Transform Scale, or Control T would be the shortcut there. And the grass is small, so I might as well once again scale this to at least meet the width of my drawing. All right, and I can even move this up to just below that cut plane. And in this case, since I am sort of at an angle, I'm going to fix this later. I'm going to move the grass down. Now I pre-checked my drawing just to make sure I remembered where it was by checking vanishing points and just perspectives of my the perspective of my building, and my horizon line for my building is about where I have the grass right now. So I'm going to set my grass to this scale here. All right. It becomes a little awkward around the chimney, arguably, and this and that, but it sort of has the grass now appearing to extend in the background. Now I find this to be awkward. I could potentially put a sky back here. I don't know that I'd like that in the drawing because this house isn't meant to just sort of be on the edge of nothingness. So I'm going to do a little trick instead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fade this grass out instead and just let it go off into the horizon and blur away into the distance. And so to do that, I'm going to start with a layer mask. I'm just going to add it to my layer, and I'm going to go to my let's see, what do I want to do? I'm going to draw a box around this whole area, and I can go up above the grass a little bit, but I also want to sort of make sure I've got the whole grass in the area that I'm going to work in. And I'm going to go to gradient, and I'm going to select black to white gradient, and I always forget which way it goes first, but I'm going to draw a vertical line straight down, starting from just below the edge of the grass to just above the highest point of my cut line. And I did it backwards as usual. You can see I faded it the wrong way, so I'm going to undo that, Control Z, and I'll do it again. I'm going to start just above the highest point of my cut line and hold Shift to draw a straight line up to just below that horizon line and fade it out just like that. And I'll just do Control D for deselect. And now I've got the ground sort of fading into the distance, and that really is really nice and enhances it even further. Again, you wouldn't use that for a regular section because you wouldn't see the grass going up unless it was on a hillside. But for a section perspective, you sort of would see that in the distance. So I'll fade it off just so I don't have to worry about the background elements. I can actually see I'm over 10 minutes in this video, so I did want to talk about adding some scale figures and doing some lighting features to this. I think what I'll do is I'll just do that in another video, so this video will just be about the ground plane. So good luck, have fun, and make great drawings.